My name is Granison Shines. I am the CEO and co-founder of a coaching organization and consultancy called Seduire International.
I love it. What is your secret to a good life?
Secret to a good life is understanding people, understanding human nature. And my experience has been if you understand human nature, then you can maneuver properly within different people. Some things being the foundational, whether they're a man or a woman, some things that are just there from a foundational standpoint, human nature standpoint. And I have found that the best experience is understanding people, the nuances of people, and then just talking to them on their level.
Can you talk about how you have developed this ability to understand people? What is there a specific
Sure.
story where you realized, wow, I don't get why this person is talking to me this way or why this thing went down this certain way, and then you just
Sure.
buckled down and figured it out?
Sure, yeah, absolutely. It's a fact. It started. The inception was when I was 15 years old and I got into martial arts. Funny story that helped me understand people a lot better. Let me explain that. So in my tutelage in martial arts, my Sifu kept repeating these words. What you're learning in this class, you can use outside these four walls. I just kept hearing that. So when I was 17, I got my first real corporate job, started in the what they call the multiplexer lab and worked my way up. But I had a really, really good boss there. And he took me under his wings and started showing me some opportunities and things that were very, very synonymous with my tutelage in martial arts. And then I left there and I went to another organization that sold electronic components. And then I became the manager, the leader. They asked me to be field sales and inside sales manager. And I agreed to do that. Never done leadership or anything like that at all. And during that time, I kept hearing again, what my Sifu, not seafood, but Sifu, S-I-F-U, of martial arts, Kung Fu teacher, master teacher. I kept hearing those words, same words. What you've learned in this class, you can use outside of these four walls. And so I started practicing the information about people, situational awareness, others awareness, self-awareness, confidence, leadership. I became what they call the senior student in the class. And that helped me tremendously. So I just started applying what I learned in martial arts to the leadership position. And that helped me really get to know people. We had to learn the nonverbal communication. If you're squaring off with someone, what is the potential thing that they can do based on how they're standing? So that was my inception into learning nonverbal communication. It just spiraled from there. They just sent me to school for leadership management so that the next place I went to, the next corporate job I went to, once I went from one location to another, still in the electronic components industry. And that really sparked a journey of leadership that I'm still on to this very day.
Can you help people who interact with folks all the time do one thing physically that will help soften up the relationships that they have and enable more trust? Is there a trick to standing? Is there a trick to voice inflection? Is there a trick to looking at something in particular? I'll give my secret first.
Sure.
So I found that whenever I point my foot right at someone's heart, I pay attention to them more.
Okay.
They become almost like a compass. And when my feet are flat on the floor, I am typically dialed in, right? I can speak, I have glib, I'm articulate, eloquent, just by having my feet on the floor and by pointing my toe right at the center of their body. My posture is all them, right?
Right.
And I'm focused on them. So that's my secret. What's one of yours?
So yours is the foot. Mine's are the shoulders. If I'm squaring off shoulder to shoulder, heart to heart, per se, that kind of thought process, then I can connect with them. My energy is in tune with them. It's just going right towards them. Theirs going towards mine. If I have it, and I've noticed also others' awareness, if their shoulders are turned, then my energy is kind of going past them. They might not be as much of attention. So I look at the shoulders. If the shoulders are squared off, then we have a very good connection. That heart to heart, as we call it. That's my secret.
Now, so understanding people and then how to speak to them requires that you profile them in some aspect. You listen, you ask, you watch, and you can start to get a sense for like, okay, this person is probably a little bit more introverted. So I need to let them talk a lot more,
Sure.
and they'll kind of figure it out on their own. But you only know that from, you have to actually conversate with them. You have to actually have an interaction with
Correct.
them.
Correct.
And so what are some quick ways that you figure people out? What are some quick things that you look for when trying to like figure out who you're talking to?
Interesting question, because we study that. How do I connect with someone on a very, very quick level? And in fact, my reason for getting into sales, and I sold cars initially for 6 months before I met the boss that hired me for electronic components. My logic and thinking was, if I can connect with someone in, say, 2 hours and get them to trust me to buy this really, really big investment, then I can utilize that same skill set for developing a longer term relationships and selling Microsoft, I was going to say selling components, microchips, and understanding how to deal with a buyer over a long period of time. Some buyers you deal with for 2, 3, 5 years. As long as they're there, as long as I'm there, we may have that continuous relationship. And I proved myself to be right, just testing all the influential nuances. So we have this graphic that talks about it has 8 points on it. It's called the influence graphic. One of those graphics is, at least one of the points on the graphic is developing rapport. To learn how to develop rapport, I learned how to develop rapport faster. And that's all about is there something that I can find that we have an affinity with for one or another? And that's a very key component. And like you said, letting them talk about that, but finding that initial connection by asking the right questions or making the right statements, that will enhance the relationship from a rapport standpoint tremendously.
Are there go-to questions that you ask in your rapport section that are able to give you just like the perfect, and whatever they answer, they are just going back to that example, extroverted, or
Sure.
that they're more neurotic, or
Right.
are there some
Yeah.
questions that are like money ones that you ask every time, or is it always just a fly by night, just pay attention?
Conceptually, it's like this. We have a concept, a communication concept we call wide and shallow and narrow and deep. So let me talk about that. So wide and shallow communication is all about the small talk. So I open them up with small talk. How was your day? How's it going? What do you do? All these basic questions. And it's very nuanced for the person as I read their body language and see if they're more introverted or extroverted. And then we get into the narrow and deep, where we start talking about more specific things, even pertaining to their specific domain knowledge, or whatever that may be, or whatever the subject matter is. So combined with those two, then I can pinpoint much better and look at observe how they respond. And that will tell me whether they're more introverted, their body language as well, whether they're extroverted, how their facial expressions are. Nonverbal communication tells you a whole lot about a person very quickly.
So I've been using the culture index. Have you ever heard of the culture index before? It's kind of like the Strengths Finder test, or the 16 personalities Myers-Briggs. So the culture index, it measures attitudes and beliefs. So is it important to be aggressive? Is it important to be committed? Is it important to be punctual, right? It starts to profile a person based off of things that they believe, adjectives about themselves and about the job that they do. So I've started coupling that with Chris Voss's Never Split the Difference. And in that book, he talks a lot about labels. The label sounds like. So it's like, Grannison, it seems like you like to feel good in the clothes that you're wearing. Right? You're either going to agree, or it's like, it seems like this isn't really interesting for you. That's a dangerous question, because all of a sudden they're going to come to the defense of the label. No. They're not defensive against you. They're defensive against that idea. No. I am interested. And then you can start listening.
Yes.
And so a lot of what I've been doing recently in my communication patterns is trying to profile people as quickly as possible with false labels. Right?
Oh, okay.
So,
Gotcha.
yeah. So it's almost like it seems like there's some really dangerous ones out there. So I work with a lot of people in finance, right? In talking about passive income. And it's like it seems like you haven't put a lot of effort into becoming financially free. I will get an entire history of their financial life at that point. They will open up to me immediately just to show like, no, financial freedom is important to me, right? And they're just going to give me all of it. And so, like, is there anything that you have found that just cuts like a knife that is able to get people to open up quicker? Verbal or nonverbal tricks that allow you to get to know people faster and get them to open up quicker?
So diving deeper into the influence aspect, one of those bubbles is the ask the right questions. That's all you see on the graphic. I'm going to show you the graphic. The other side of that is making the right statements. So I have observed that in being assertive in communication, there are times when I do ask questions, but there are times when I'll make more statements. And that also puts people into a position to where they're either going to open up more, and I know that I can talk to them more about their statements, or I can make more statements because they're comfortable with me making statements. So for instance, I'll give you an example. If I said, what's your name? Versus, tell me your name. Right? It comes across to people differently, and they actually respond differently. So if I'm observing and I'm understanding that they are not as vocal as I would like them to be, then of course there's the open-ended questions, the Socratic questions, those sorts of opportunities. But then I will either choose one of the two based on whichever one I initially utilize and quickly assess which side of the coin they're on. Then I can utilize that as one of my quote tricks in order to get them to be more vocal. It works for me pretty well. That's a high level thought process and explanation of it, but it works like a charm.
I love that your secret to a good life has to do with your interactions with other people.
Yeah.
Go ahead.
I love dealing with people.
I think it's the one thing that is so dynamic that no matter what, whether you're in business, right, quote unquote, in business or out of business, if you have interactions with people, especially stimulating people, then your life is just going to be better, right?
Sure.
The blue liners or whatever they're called, where they're living over 100.
Right.
Typically, they have lots of friends. You know, you live longer when you have lots of friends.
Lots of friends. Yeah.
If you can win friends and influence people, then you're going to have a good life.
Good book, by the way.
A timeless classic.
Yeah.
I just got finished reading one that I would recommend. It's so cool. Have you ever read any David Graeber?
I have not.
He's an anthropologist. So he started a book. It's called Debt: The First 5,000 Years.
Debt.
DEBT.
Debt. Okay.
It is the most fascinating exposition on credit history that I've ever heard, and it's a lot of fun.
Really?
Yeah, 10 out of 10. It's the most influential book that I've ever read in my life.
You have to send me the title to that so I can make sure that I have that.
I'll post it in the show notes as well.
Okay.
So where can everyone find you?
You can find me at SeduireIntl.com. That's spelled SEDUIREINTL.com. That's our website for the coaching, and do very much so connect with me on LinkedIn. Just type my name, the most unique name you will not get confused. Granison Shines, spelled GRANISON, last name Shines, like the sun shines, SHINES.
Thanks for coming on the show. This has been the Pulse Ox podcast. Please, if you found this episode valuable, give us a like on Spotify and share it with a friend.